Good evening. You're very welcome back to Faith Matters. My guest today is physiotherapist Aisling Keeley. Aisling was living what she thought was the high life in Dubai until a patient of hers gave her a gift. This gift was to lead to her finding what she had always been searching for, but had always eluded her: peace of mind. Well, Aisling, great to have you back.
Thank you.
I'd like to ask you, could you recap a little bit what we were talking about in our last talk?
Yes, David, I think I was just mentioning about becoming more of a frequent visitor to Medjugorje, and I guess how God had used other people to really just ensure that I was coming back to Him, and He wasn't giving up on me, nor did He give up on anyone else. Likewise, but I wanted to get as many people to Medjugorje as I could, but I had to deal with all the fear and the lies that I'm not good enough. You're no good. You're not smart enough. Who'd want to go with you? So I left Dubai, came back to Ireland, and as soon as I came back, I thought it was the most perfect time to come back because we came into COVID-19, and I felt by God's grace He got me out of there, and I left Dubai, and it was just so powerful. One of the girls I actually had very good friends with when I was out in Dubai, we ended up falling out, and I started to pray for her one time when I was in Medjugorje, and I actually went to confession, and I confessed just how I had hurt her, not looking at how she had hurt me, which is the way I was looking for the 2 years earlier, but actually how I had hurt her. And I confessed that and all the unforgiveness I had in my heart to her. And would you believe I started to pray for her out of love. 2 weeks later, after not meeting this girl for 2 years in Dubai, 2 weeks later, just before I leave, I'm about to leave Dubai forever. I'm in a bar, and who is in the bar? Only this girl. And I think, oh my gosh, she's going to come up and give out to me. Oh my gosh, keep my head down. And she walks up to me and says, oh my gosh, Aisling. And I said, yes, Claire. And she goes, I'm so sorry for everything that I ever did to you. And I'm like, oh my gosh, no, I am so sorry for everything that I did to you. And in this moment, we embraced. And it was the love of the Father. When I chose to forgive her, didn't just end with me. It actually started to pour into her. And she was the one that walked up to me and said she was sorry for everything that she did to me. Imagine, that's the power of God, the power of forgiveness. And we embraced. I remember I just pulled away, and I just saw on her neck a chain, a cross. And when I lived with this girl in Dubai, oh my gosh, she would say she was an atheist, okay? And I was like, what are you wearing? Are you wearing a cross? And she goes, oh my gosh, Aisling, yes, I got this made. I got my mom to get this made for me as a gift. And she said, let's just say I got curious. When you left my life, I got curious. And so she wanted to get a cross made. And it was just a beautiful moment for me, because I was shown by God, despite all the destruction that had gone on in Dubai in my life, emotional pain, all that trauma, everything that went on, even to the point of even greed, that I did something right. And in my final 2 weeks in Dubai, she comes on my path, and I knew it was time for me to go. Mother Angelica would often say that we have two conversions. The first where we recognize that God exists, and the other when we're ready to do the will of God. And that's what took the time for me, was that until I was really, that was it, I'm going to do everything that God is asking of me. That took a lot of strength and a lot of grace. And that's what came.
Tell me this, between the first time you went to Medjugorje and the priest, you got the absolution from the priest for all your past sins. You were sort of starting a new life there. But at the same time, you went back to Dubai. You were living with somebody in Dubai, and you basically forgot about what had happened in Medjugorje, or how did that work out?
Yeah, well, I parked it. If I don't deal with that, then I'm not going to feel guilty or, convicted. So I couldn't live. They say you can live in the world and walk with God and walk in the world, but you can't. It's impossible. And I didn't realize it was a T-junction, that you actually make a decision to go left or right, with Jesus or with the world. And Jesus has me, of course, like the rest of us, in the world, but not to be of the world. We're meant to be like beacons of light, like ambassadors for Him.
So when you went back to Medjugorje the first time, you just went back into your drinking life?
Oh, yeah.
Living with this person.
I carried a few more prayers in my wallet, let's just say. Yeah, I carried a few more prayers
you weren't married to this person, you were just living
No,
with the
no, no,
person.
no. And this is a kind of a common thing, it's like I had a few more prayers in my wallet. I believed God existed. He wasn't just a far away hope there's something when I die kind of. But I actually knew that God definitely existed, but I wasn't willing to change a thing. And that didn't happen until I went back out to Dubai another time, and just it was pure grace. I finally made a decision. I actually prayed to Our Lady, and I made a decision. I actually prayed at her statue, and at the moment I prayed, I just could smell roses. There was no roses around. There was nothing, no flowers around, and I just got a waft as if someone just sprayed perfume with roses in front of me, and I just started to cry. And I knew I'd heard about this. I heard people mention this. I never had that experience. Lots of people have seen different visions, and Our Lady in the sky, and the moon spinning and all these different things. I didn't have those experiences, but in this moment I had this experience, and I just knew that she'd heard my prayer. And then after that, I chose to do the will of God. I started to look up, okay, what does He want of me? What is Jesus speaking of in the Bible? I started to open my Bible, which was always there but had dust collected on it, and it never saw the light of day. I started to try and pray. I started to go to Mass. I didn't just go once a week. Quite baffling. I started to go nearly every evening to the church, which is right behind my work. I started, it's things, you could say, yeah, it could get easier. I knew I had a peace, but around me, turmoil. Friends just started disappearing. I just felt God was just stripping things that were not meant to be my life, stripping them away one by one, from like your boyfriend to your friends. All these things got stripped away. Once I made a decision to follow Jesus, others were not coming with me. Let's just put it that way.
Tell me, just one or two questions. You had now come back from Dubai. You were living in Ireland. And the first question is, how much time elapsed between your first visit to Medjugorje, where you got that amazing experience, to when you actually decided that, okay, you're going to take this seriously and started changing? What was the time, how much time elapsed?
Yes, so David, it was 2015 when I went out to Medjugorje first, and it was 2019 when I actually came back from Dubai, where I made the decision out there my last 6 months to actually live the will of God. I started going to Mass on a Sunday. I started frequenting the priest for a regular confession. I started trying to pray. I was trying to look for, was there any Irish people that I could just join with? There was none. The only friends I was starting to make were Filipinos and Indians, and joined their little groups. There was a Legion of Mary out there was a Neo-Catechumenical Way, and I joined those communities, and they helped me along massively. Otherwise, I had no one to help me on this journey. I was clueless. I was like, how do I keep this peace that's in my heart and stop it from just leaving and falling into that turmoil again? And then I would go back out to Medjugorje again. And this time I was just growing, and I was growing, and I was growing. And I can honestly say, when I made the decision to follow Jesus in 2019, it was like Jesus just pushed me down the hill. I was gaining momentum. It was just easy. I didn't have to do anything. I felt it was actually just easy. I was actually free for the first time. It wasn't like I had to, I can make a decision for this or I could do this. It wasn't that. I didn't feel like I'm a slave now to Jesus. I actually felt I was free. Because before I was getting enslaved into all the drinking and all this, and I was left miserable. And now I just felt totally free. It's not like I just gave up drinking altogether. I would happily go out, but I would actually know, okay, I'm actually having just a couple of drinks and that would be it. And I'd know my limit, where I'm keeping with myself and what Aisling believes. I'd know my limit. I can go, of course, into parties, into weddings, and people always think you're drinking because you're up dancing. I would love to dance. Okay, so I'll be up on the dance floor, and they'll straight away think that you're after having shots and drinks, and they'll be trying to force this on you. And I'm like, no, I'm actually sober, but I actually don't need alcohol to have a good time. That's your issue, not my issue. I don't need alcohol to have a good time because I have Jesus inside, and it's the fuel that I need, and that sustains me and gives me an abundant life now. And so after I came back, I did the Masters in Theology. Gosh, whoever knew that I would do such a thing? I didn't even open the Bible up to a few months before that. And suddenly I was learning all this teaching of the church. I was intrigued. Once you learn a little bit, you want to learn more. And it was so deep. It was so unbelievably deep. I couldn't get over it. I felt like no one had told me anything about this. I was being fed like just baby food all my life, just and nothing in the depth of Jesus and who he was and what he said. Didn't know anything. And after that, I came across this beautiful man. His name was Jim Brown. He was from Mayo, and he passed away just actually over a year ago. And he became a great friend to me. He was actually formerly an alcoholic. He drank since the age of age 17, got kicked out of school, expelled again. And he was suicidal. A friend of his took him to Medjugorje, and he had a huge conversion. And he turned his whole life around. So much so that he started bringing thousands of people from the west of Ireland to Medjugorje. And I came across this man in my time there, and he saw something in me, something more in me, a calling in me. And we see it in the Bible, God doesn't pick like the Pharisees or the scribes, the one who know it all. He doesn't necessarily pick them. He picks the St. Paul, the murderer of the early Christian church. Paul, we refer to as Saul in the Bible. And so he picks us in our weakness because he sees who we are meant to be, not who we have become in the world, but who he had called us to be in our mother's womb. And so this man, Jim, this beautiful friend of mine, ended up seeing something in me and told me, go home, Aisling, and said prayer meeting. I was like, there's no way I'm doing such a thing. And after that, I started taking groups to Medjugorje. I even went to America with him, playing music. I actually started to play the guitar. I never sang. I started to sing. Even people have come up to me saying recently, Aisling, would you create a CD? I'm like, what? So it's actually like mind-blowing how I lived this lie my entire life. The lies that I'm not good enough. The lies that you're not smart enough. The lies that whatever you say isn't going to be worth hearing. The lie that you cannot sing. Every little thing lie that I was told in the playground was from the enemy. And he didn't just come after me, he comes after every single person and every listener who listened to this. I'm certain there's lies that you believe about yourself that have been planted in there in your childhood. And I'm telling you that Jesus did not put them there, nor does he want you to remain there. And if anyone ever had just a bit of curiosity to say, gosh, is something Aisling's saying here real? Is this really true? Or is there more to this life rat race that we're living? Is there more? I'm telling you there's more. And I would just encourage any listener who's just in any ways curious, to reach out to you, David, for the other testimonies. And I take groups twice a year to Medjugorje. I don't say I know it all, but often people say I'm like the black sheep that turned the corner. And so I know what people are going through when they come in the group and they tell me, Aisling, I don't even know why I'm here. Like, I don't even know if I believe. And I said, amen, you're probably the most honest person in this group. And I didn't even have that honesty when I came in the first group. So God is going to use you powerfully. Wait and see. And so I've seen people transform. There's actually a girl that I first met, came her first time to Medjugorje, she came in my group. And she lived in Dublin. She was always out partying. And her huge conversion, she had a tumor in her brain the size of an egg. And we started praying for her. We didn't know who she was, but we were asked by her uncle and her father to pray for her, and we did so. We prayed for her every single day. And then I met her, and I made a little prayer with her, and I asked her, would you come to Medjugorje in our group? She was about 25 at the time, I think. And she came, and she couldn't believe the peace and the love that she had. She basically was completely healed of the tumor. She said they removed the size of an egg from her brain. And she often said God had to make that much space in her brain for him to fit into her life, into her mind, because it was consumed by everything else but him. And you wouldn't believe, she joined my prayer group for the last 2 years, and she was the one playing music. And she even had lost 75% of the vision in her eye. And I told her to go to this priest. We had Father Brendan Walsh here from Thurles and Palentine's, and he prayed with her, and he said, there's something wrong with your right optic nerve. He didn't have a clue, but Jesus told him what was wrong with her. And he prayed for that to be healed. And her vision was completely restored. And she's gone on now to enter religious life.
Praise God.
She's gone on to discern if this is what God wants of her. She's totally given herself up to Jesus. So she's gone in this moment now. There's a new community set up in Connemara, and she's gone and she's enrolled. So praise God. We wish Laura well. But God is doing lots of things. And not just even to religious life, but other people just believing in themselves. People coming, setting up a business. Getting married, never thought they'd get married, and suddenly they find their spouse. So there's so many miracles I could talk about. through the groups. It's unbelievable. But the most important thing is the people believing in God, but then believing in themselves and recognizing their worth and their dignity that was bestowed on them by God the Father, and that's often been snatched away. But He restores it. And some of you might know, David, I mentioned to you earlier, the name of my clinic is called Be Restored, and it's like restoring who you were always meant to be. And obviously, you can come to me for physio, and I restore you physically of ailments, of pain, whatever. If it's your back or your neck, I see a lot of people with chronic pain, and so is my sister. We both work here in a clinic together here in Paulstown. But also restoring yourself, mind, body, soul, and spirit, because we're all encompassing. We're not just one-dimensional, and that's the problem. No one sees you in your fullness, and I try and see people in their fullness when they walk in the door, that they're carrying something that I knew nothing about, and to respect that. And to see that, yeah, they're carrying a lot when they come in the door, not just pain in their back, but it could be a difficult marriage, it could be a sickness, it could be a loved one that's unwell. And I have to take all of that into account, and to recognize with a heart of compassion, I suppose, the love that God has for them as well, and try my best to get them well. And there's always hope. I always say there's always hope that you can get better. Even if you've gone to other physios or other chiropractors, I always give them hope. That's the one thing I do here. And as I said, I take 2 groups every year to Medjugorje. And my next group is going through Marian pilgrimages in Easter, David. So if anyone ever reaches out, or if you felt on your heart to share that group with them, they're more than welcome to join me. But can I actually finish, David, with a poem I wrote? I just felt in the break time, if you have time. It's actually something that I had written in my last 5-10 minutes as I sat on the plane before I left Dubai. And I couldn't believe I'd written this poem. I'd never put things down into words before. But obviously God had just allowed me to pour out on the page, on my notepad on my phone, what I was experiencing. And it's called Dubai, I Say Dubai, Dubye. And it goes like this. I will arise and go now, for my time in Dubai has come to an end. Sadness fills the chambers to that once hardened beat. Thoughts of the unknown chase me. Doubts more often arise. But I assure myself, God above is my navigator, my guide. I bid farewell to the many sorrows and despairs, the many hardships and trials. I bid farewell to a woman naive to her existence, a woman who endured disappointment more than her emerald heart was ever to endure, until one day you came knocking. To be loved, Lord, seemed such a chore. But I thank you for your knock, though so soft I couldn't ignore. My bitter soul, her withered rise, worn stem and stalk, a soul whose odour was all but delight, embraced the love undeservingly, for I was all but a pure sight. So often you came knocking upon my hardened door, but only in the lasting darkness did I finally choose to change the decor. To that once hardened heart, eyes that were blind, I now acknowledge true beauty I hold within. Sheltered from the harsh winds of self-judgment and sorrow I once endured alone, renewed by his merciful love, filled with substance, not from this city, oh no, but from the man far above. To my friends, with ears to hear, let them hear. If I shared comforting words that touched your heart, know that it was only for he knows the words I needed to say, for he no longer wants you to be apart. When you find that you may struggle, as the darkness often descends, remember that he loves you, and this has and will never end. When you are ready to call in the ripple of darkness as it unfolds, the all too familiar suffocating words of others, the doubts, the fears, the pressures we choose to endure alone. Allow him to be a fountain of light, a light in your darkest moment, the dew falling like a blanket of peace infiltrates a rose once withered. With the Lord's mercy, peace instills your soul. What many don't realize, he doesn't push or enforce, but merely waits and waits for you to unlock the door and simply say, "You win, Father, come in." He never held a grudge, never chose not to love your cracked but soon to be mended soul. Like a father to his daughter or son, he embraces your heart. Now it is one. He will say to the once lost soul, "Welcome into my arms." To you whose heart felt rejection, "My child, my love is all you need." To you whose soul is burdened with fear, fear not that of freedom. Upon the dark night as it unfolds, his knock so soft as it echoes upon your heart, the only words you will need to say, "Father, take me home."
It's a very beautiful note to finish up with. Aisling, I want to thank you so much for bearing your heart there in that poem. It's really beautiful. The Lord is waiting at the door, and if we answer, he will come in, and we will
Absolutely.
dine with him, and he will dine with us.
And literally the name of the prayer is only Jesus, Jesus,
He's patient.
Jesus. Amen.
He's patient. He's patient. He waits. He never stops waiting, just waiting for us to open the door and invite him in. And you've done that, and your life has changed.
Dramatically.
And I'm sure many people listening will turn to the Lord and say, "Lord, here, I'll open the door to you. Please come in." Well, with that, Aisling, I want to thank you so much. And I look forward to meeting you in person, maybe in Kilkenny, maybe here at Wexford, but please God. And thank you so much.
Thank you so much, David. Thank you again. God bless.
Well, that's it for today. I'll be back with you next week. Don't forget, you can find this program and all our previous programs on the audio podcast Finding Happiness on YouTube, Spotify, and drbhennessy.com. For now, good night and God bless.